stopped using dollars, would that or would that not mean an immediate permanent end to the Federal Reserve and the international banking cartel?
No. Absolutely.
What would they do if nobody used their dollars? How would they get any power, any money? Nobody borrows it. Nobody trades with it.
He's saying it's the plug to their power. What happens if you pull their plug?
If everyone understood and traded with silver starting tomorrow and nobody would accept dollars for anything, what happens to the IMF and the Federal Reserve and the international bankers and all that?
The banking, the idea that, look,
nobody.
And they want to just say, it's good if I know this, you know, because that'll help me and help my situation. But if somebody else doesn't want to listen and pay attention to this, that's their problem. No, that's your problem too. That's your problem as well, okay? And the reason it's your problem is because other people's ignorance is going to affect your freedom. Whether you like that dynamic or not, that's how it is. Individuals within society. And right now, we don't even have, if we have 2% of all of society even understanding this, let alone changing their behavior, I would say we're doing massively well. We don't even have that. I'd say we probably have under 1% still, okay? You know, we need to really step up our efforts in this regard. And a lot of this comes down to courage. A lot of it. I have people writing to me all the time, Mark, I want to get involved, but I'm still, you know, I don't want to necessarily put myself out there. You know, they're waiting for something. You know what they're waiting for? They're waiting for a backbone to grow up their spine. That's what they're waiting for. You just got to get out there and start doing it. And you got to take your chances. You got to throw your cards down. You got to throw your dice down on the table and cast the die and say, it's going to be what it is. That's it. I'm not interested in what happens to me in the physical. I'm here to perform a mission in the metaphysical. The universe is spoken into existence, as I've said countless times. You know, if we're not putting our voice out there, we're not contributing to the chorus of the truth. And then we're not going to be really, truly on the right side of history. Because for people to say that they intellectually understand this and they're not communicating it to others and they're not trying to reach the influencers of our society, they don't really know, and they certainly haven't converted it into action. You know, do they really know and do they really care? That becomes the question when people don't want to convert this into action by speaking. All right? So, you know, this slide, I think, helps people to understand the main types of influencers in our society. And you may be one of the three. Okay, and if you are one of those influencers, then do the work that you need to be doing. I consider myself that maven in the middle, okay? I am a maven when it comes to a certain type of community, a certain type of individual. Not in every dynamic that I find myself in life, however, okay? So, and that social circle is only going to be so big with stuff like what I do with What on Earth is Happening, folks, especially at this point in history where we have such an astounding array of ignorance, you know, amassed against us, you know, because so many people are still in that, you know, they're going to cover their eyes, ears, and mouth, you know, and they don't want any information coming into the contrary of their predisposed worldview. And they're certainly not going to communicate it to other people. They're shut down, you know. We need to reach the people who those people will trust. This is why a lot of people who have a lot of people in their social media sphere of influence, okay, are often targeted by the powers that should not be, you know, and if they start talking out against them, they'll try to do whatever they can to ruin their, you know, life dynamic. Okay. They'll bring financial burdens down upon them. You know, they'll try to smear their name, you know, and slander them, etc. And many other ways, even blackmail, you know, force them into a situation where, you know, they can be blackmailed. And you see this a lot with celebrities and people who already have a lot of people who are paying attention to them. Okay, so there are legitimate reasons why people are hesitant, but we have to shed that fear, you know, because believe me, not doing this is going to result in a much greater harm and degradation to all of society than doing it and having your personal situation attacked. Okay, this is where we have to overcome that fear and understand it doesn't matter what personal losses one might have to endure or sustain. You know, the rewards that you're going to get by speaking the truth and helping to influence other people are going to be much greater in the long term. You know, they're trying to shut down people of, you know, these political persuasions who they can slap a label on. You know, I talk about they haven't tried to do that with me because I don't think anybody is capable of labeling what I do. They don't even know what to think of it, or they don't even want to draw any attention to it, you know, because they certainly don't want people listening to my stuff. You know, they absolutely don't want you coming here and getting the information that's in What on Earth is Happening, because this is the most forbidden of the forbidden. This is the stuff that they don't even want to even allude to hint at, to even ever speak the name, because once you start looking down this rabbit hole, it's all over. It's all over for your belief in authority. You know, it's all over for that religion. Really, if you're really being honest with yourself and you really do go down the rabbit hole that I present here, it's all over for all religion. And that's the last thing the social engineers want, because that's their main tool of control, is religion, religious thought. That's their main tool of control. And that's what we're trying to break down here from day one, is getting people out of a religious mindset and helping them to understand that they need to learn what the actual truth of what's taking place here on earth is, and the truth about real spirituality. Okay, and they don't want you looking into that, because that opens up whole new avenues of knowledge and understanding. That will open up knowledge about suppressed science, occulted sciences, the occulted aspects of the human psychology. And they don't want anybody looking into the occult. That's why I'm the last person who they want to draw any attention to. Part of what I'm talking about here is it all comes down to courage, folks. You know, if you're going to become an influencer of other people, you have to have courage to speak. You have to have courage to speak unapologetically, you know? And this is one of the biggest dynamics that I see in our society that's just not there. We still have cowards walking among us, you know, who want to remain anonymous. You know, what do you think the whole powers that be, the whole power structure, thinking of people like that? They're so afraid. Those people are walking around, those social engineers and their thugs are walking around like this. Here's their mindset, folks. They're like, look at that little punk ass bitch. They're so afraid of us, they won't even use their real name. Imagine, they won't even say their name. They're so afraid of us and what we could possibly do to them. Like, I don't give a shit what you can do to me physically. You think I'm afraid of you or anyone? You think I'm so identified with the physical body that you think I think this is who I am? That I'm this meat suit? You think that's where I'm at with what I know spiritually? And you think that's going to hold me back from speaking and continuing to speak? You have another thought coming to you, if that's what you think. But let me tell you something. That's what these controllers think of people who remain anonymous cowards. Okay? You're never going to influence anybody with an assumed name or with, you know, being anonymous. It's like they're just looking at you and going, wow, what a punk ass bitch coward. That's exactly what they're thinking. You want to know how I know that? Because that's exactly what I think. Okay? To put it bluntly and in street language. All right? And I'm being nice about it compared to what I really think of that dynamic. This is us as an individual, okay? And we see the maven, we see the influence that they have in other aspects of society and the dynamics that they're involved with, and we say, wow, wouldn't it be awesome if we were able to wake up that maven, that person clearly with more influence than me in this social dynamic or social situation or family dynamic, okay? So, you know, you could look at the person, the green, you know, person icon at the top of that star as, let's say, someone like myself, and the maven, let's say it's someone like my mother, right? And I'm going to go to work on them. I'm going to put the word out. Here I am putting out the word, okay? I'm trying to reach their mind. I'm trying to help them to see the truth. I'm trying to help them to clear the cobwebs out and clear all the mind control out and get them to see reality as it is. And I'm working on them and working on them and working on them and working on them. And I'm taking information to them every day. And I'm making them watch documentaries, you know, and I'm putting articles on their computer and I'm sending them email articles, etc. Okay? And you know what it's doing? Largely not a damn thing. Okay? And we've all been there, right? All of us have been at that place. I'm sure almost every one of us, we have one individual we care a lot about. We have one individual we really want to see get it, and we try to work on them, and there's like no progress, right? They're resistant. They don't care. They don't want to know. They don't look at the stuff you try to send to them or give to them, right? What you have to understand, going back to this slide, folks, if we could cut back to it briefly, what you have to understand is just picture on the outside of the maven, all the way around this star, okay? Picture the poison signal, right? The poison signal of the mainstream media. I didn't add this to this slide, but perhaps I should have. Just imagine other of these radio wave graphics coming in from the outside, but even bigger ones, 50,000 watt ones, okay? Coming in from the outside of every direction, 360 degrees. And they're all hammering that individual with untruths, with lies, with propaganda, okay? With fake news narratives, okay? And this person in their not fully awakened state is still susceptible to all that poisonous influence and social engineering. So think about it. When one person even steps away, the shield is down in that area, okay? If they all would step away, they're being bombarded from every direction. And in my case, I was hammering them just from that one direction for 10 years, okay? And then from every other direction, or whenever I stepped away, that poison influence came right back in like a tidal wave, just swarming them. Okay? So we have to understand that this is a dynamic of continual perseverance with an individual. Continual perseverance with a single individual, because you know that the time investment is worth it. Because you know who they are then working. 5 people working on one would be better than 50 working on 1,000, possibly. Okay? Because of how powerful and how many people that one person is capable of influencing, the number that they're capable of influencing. Okay? If you had 50 people who know the truth in a given geographic vicinity, and they want to go to work on, let's say, 1,000 people, they might wake up 10 out of those 1,000 people. Okay? Think about it. You're not going to wake up everybody you bring the truth to. Okay? So 50 people doing that with even 100 people each, who knows? You might wake up like 10 or 15, 20 people to that extent. A maven, however, if those 5 people just worked on that one individual, might wake up 1,000 people. That's how powerful the influence of the maven is. And this is what we're failing to do. We are failing as a network of people who know the truth about what's going on and are trying to bring that information to other people. We're failing miserably at this dynamic, at the identification of other social influencers. We are not doing it effectively enough. This is about courage to put the truth out there, especially in an age of censorship, in an age of suppression of knowledge and ideas and information. And imagine, I look out my door, I see other people in the area where I live, and they are full-blown advocating Soviet-style and Chinese-style censorship. It's disgusting. Thinking that people's freedom of speech should be limited and suppressed, and they should be silenced. You have to be kidding. This is where we're at in American society. This is where we're at. Perseverance. See? It doesn't make a difference how much you have to keep struggling. You keep going. You keep going with it. Okay? That's what a lot of people I see when it comes to this dynamic. I'm going to stay on this topic for a second because I think it's very important when it comes to influence in society and how we could become the mavens of a society. We could become the new media. But how many people fail short in that task, in that goal? Because they don't know how to go about it in any way. And they're not learning. See, I always give people the benefit of the doubt when they're open-minded and willing to learn. Then I don't hammer on them. I don't get on their case. As long as they're open-minded, willing to learn, willing to make changes, willing to look at something new and say, okay, I didn't know how to do that, but let me try it, get into it, see if I could do it the right way, and just get involved. Then I don't have any problem with them. It doesn't matter if they're not fully competent. Okay? It's called trying. It's called making a real effort to try. And they're not afraid. That means they're not afraid to fail. See, a lot of people are like, I'm afraid to fail. I'm afraid I'll mess it up. I'm afraid I'll break this or that. And so I'm not going to even start. And so they never even bother. They never try. And that's part of, again, taking it back to the dynamic of courage is a huge part of today's presentation. Because influence and reaching other people is ultimately going to come from a state of being in courage, not just being in knowledge and caring, saying, yes, I do want to do it. I care about this dynamic getting out there to a wider audience. It's about having the courage to actually do it. If it's not combined with the technological element, what we are going to have is a bunch of people scattered to the four winds of the earth that know a lot about the psychological, the philosophical, the occult aspect, and yet they can't do a goddamn thing with a computer to reach one other living soul anywhere on the internet. And this is the way information is propagated today, folks. It's not propagated by going and standing on a soapbox in the town square, in case you haven't understood that. It's propagated digitally. And that space, okay, that digital warfare space for the propagation of knowledge, we're not doing very well in. We're getting clobbered. The empire has struck back, okay? Let's put it that way. You know, we might have initially hit them and, blew up their first Death Star, but let's put it this way. They're rebuilding, not just rebuilding, they probably have rebuilt many of them. The whole point here is we cannot take lightly the influence of the mainstream media and the social engineers. And now there's a new technological god class, the new tech elite. You know, these big tech firms like Google, Apple, Microsoft, Facebook, Twitter, they look at themselves as the new gods of our society because of what their technology and networks have made possible, how they have made it possible for people to communicate effectively on a mass scale. And now they're trying to control that because they realize, hey, we gave people too much too fast. That's what happened, folks. That's what the social engineers realized. They gave us powerful computing tools too much too fast. So then they wanted to scale it back, right? They wanted to scale it back, make it be less powerful mobile devices that are all about consumption of information that are coming from on high, from the sources that they put out there, okay? And down into the hands of the little person who only has this small little, thumb device at their hands with actual no human interface to actually really create anything, okay? Except maybe take a few pictures or point video at somebody, okay? And then share it on their own, network that has only a few people paying attention to any given one of them. You know, when people were learning how to build whole websites and there was a diverse ecosystem when it came to websites, we were making grounds. That's when the apocalypse happened, folks. That's the apocalypse occurred past tense. And it happened during the second wave of personal computer technology coming in, Moore's Law, ramping up and taking off. And powerful desktop systems enabling people to be media creation experts, to become media creation experts, and then be communication experts by reaching people with that media. That's what personal computing advances in personal computing, desktop computing, advances in internet technologies and speeds, and advances in camera and lens technology made possible. Without a doubt. Okay, now they've scaled it back because they realized we had too much too fast, and they scaled it back, giving people tap, tap, tap with their thumbs on some little crap screen that you can't really build any media with. Sites work. Building diverse ecosystems of websites again, like we were doing in, the early 2000s, into the mid 2000s. When social media came in, it destroyed all of that. It destroyed the influence it was having. It destroyed the learning curve that was steadily ramping up almost asymptotically. Okay? Because it was a logarithmic scale of learning that was taking place, folks. All right? People were learning how to build real websites. Then everybody got on Facebook and Twitter, and that was it. Now that they have all those people in those platforms, now the censorship begins. And nobody knows how to set up anything elsewhere. And that was the plan. That was the plan the whole time. All this time, people could have been learning powerful, web technologies and desktop computing, how to really have set up media creation and communication. And they weren't doing it because they're tapping away with their thumbs on Facebook and Twitter on their phone instead of really learning computing and really learning how to become the new media. Now, we are we're in an age where people don't know how to read and write. And like a few people who have kept the scrolls and kept the books and tried to communicate the knowledge are saying, we better get out there and start teaching these people how to read and write. That's where we're at. Okay, that's the allegory. Because for people only to know how to consume media online and not know how to create it is 100% completely unacceptable. And I'll tell you what, that's where I'd say, again, 95% of the freedom community is there. Malcolm Gladwell said that ideas and products and messages and behaviors spread like viruses do. Okay? They get communicated very quickly from person to person, and it ramps up, and then it covers a wide area, geographically and geopolitically. We have to understand that we can be those influencers of change. Okay? What we have to do is we have to be willing to learn what is necessary to put that information out there. And we have to be vigilant to being able to identify who potential influencers in any given social circle or dynamic are. So those two things, we have to act as a maven ourselves, but foremostly, we should identify social influencers that are already present and already doing that work of influencing other people. Some people don't even know they're the mavens, okay? This is another dynamic you have to understand. Not only can mavens be anybody, some people don't even know they're it. They just do what they do. And they don't even understand that this dynamic or what it could potentially, the kind of change it could potentially lead to. They're not aware of that. They just are natural leaders and influencers that gravitate to that position that other people trust. So that being said, as I said before, it's like a domino effect. Okay? One thing doesn't seem like it could create that much change. It doesn't seem like it could, make that much of a difference. This whole presentation is about like how much of a factor or a difference can one individual make. And I'm telling you, a lot. That doesn't mean that for the world dynamic to change, large numbers of people need to change their behavior. That still is true. The question we're addressing here is to set off that change, okay? Often small amounts of individuals who people didn't think were going to be able to have the influence that they have can set off that type of chain reaction. So it is literally like setting up dominoes, okay? And, that's the last slide that I have in the formal presentation. Before I go to some other housekeeping and go to calls, I'm going to exit from this, and I want to see if I could bring up this video that I watched that was on YouTube, which was about one small domino being able to knock over. This guy uses he has a little tiny domino the size of a Pez candy in a pair of tweezers, and he's going to knock over 100-pound domino, okay, on the other side of this short chain of dominoes with a tiny little domino about that big. Let me see if I can find it real quick.
I will carefully place it. And there are 13 dominoes. And the largest domino, it weighs about 100 pounds and is more than a meter tall. Ready? Boom. That was 13 dominoes. If I had 29 dominoes, The last domino would be as tall as the Empire State Building.
Amazing. So, this is what the Maven effect is really about, folks. Okay. The Maven effect is about, who are we as an individual to be able to influence and have change on in a wide, overarching impact on society. And I'm telling you, we are all that individual potentially. Okay. This is about what the potential for one individual is all about. And how powerful one individual, the amount of powerful change, an effect, an influencing effect for change one individual can have in all of society. So we have to understand we're that hand, we are that potential influence that sets that into motion and sets it into effect in a wider way in our society. And that's what we have to strive to be. And we have to have courage enough to start that process, okay? And it's a learning curve for us because it is going to involve, if we're really going to reach a lot of people, it's going to involve really learning media content creation. All right. So I salute the people who are doing that already and continue your efforts. And the people who have not started that as of yet, get involved and get on the playing field, get on the battlefield, and don't wait for orders from headquarters. Get out there and start and do what you can and learn as you go. And the dynamic will get easier as you do it. You don't have to know everything at first. What on earth is happening at first, the very first week, was not as polished of a show as it is today. And you can see we're still polishing it. We're still making adjustments and changes. It's always a process. It's never something that's totally complete and in final form. Life isn't. Okay? So the whole point is, get involved now, do what you can do now. As you could do more, you ramp up your efforts. That's what it's always about. You who think, who kind of know what's going on and think we can do something. It's not, everybody who is kind of has thrown in the towel or given up or said, no, we can't influence this for the better. So there's, that's what I'm saying. I'm saying it's well under 10%, folks, that are even thinking we could turn this around at this point. And again, I'm still one of those people. As much as I think it's really bad, I wouldn't be on the air every week if I didn't think there was something we could do to make this better. Burden if you don't communicate that to other people. So I can't say it any more strongly that if you do understand what's taking place, it is your personal moral responsibility to communicate it to others. Okay, let's continue on and let's go to... So I'm going to just ride out the show, even though I don't have any slides, prepared for this, and we don't really have callers to take. So I'll go on what we've really been making the show about, which is not only influence, but courage, okay? And this is what I'm hearing from Arnold. And Arnold, I apologize. I know you wanted to call into the show that I did on veganism, and we weren't able to take your call then. And now we're having audio problems when you finally do reach us from Paris. But he was saying that things are so bad in France that the censorship has gotten to a point where people are literally being jailed for what they are saying and writing. And when you have a society that's being closed to that extent, it's, as far as I'm concerned, it's time for physical rebellion. And when they are start to do that here, I will advocate for outright physical rebellion, 1776 style, like what the founding fathers did to the agents of the British Crown. Out in the open. Advocate for it out in the open, publicly on air. Okay? That hasn't started happening here in the United States yet, but if it does, I say it's open season on anybody involved in any aspect of government who would dare to do that to someone speaking their mind. And that's what the Second Amendment is for, folks. That's what the Second Amendment is there for. That's what gun rights, period, are there for. That's what those weapons exist, to take out a tyrannical government that has become so tyrannical that they are jailing people for speaking their mind freely. And if that's what's already happening in other countries, it's long past the time for physically removing those people, literally physically destroying them. So, that's what's going on in many areas of the world, and this is why you can never allow yourself to be disarmed. Allowing yourself to be disarmed is getting rid of your last aspect of the ability to defend yourself when a tyrant comes for your rights. And that's what is occurring. And that's the level of censorship that they want, like is what is active in North Korea and China. These are countries, these are governments that have long since should have been overthrown a long time ago by their people. As brutally as necessary physically for them to do, And when people hear people say that, they think that's radical. That's not radical. It's radical to have speech closed down. That's what's radical. That it's radical that a whole society would tolerate that kind of shit. That's what's radical. It's radical that a society that is tolerating that kind of shit has already been disarmed to a large extent. That's what's radical. I mean, this is the problem, folks, is that people don't have that kind of anger in them. This is what I'm going to talk about at Anarchadelphia. The death of the sacred masculine aspect of being able to get angry at injustice, that is clear injustice taking place in a society. And another aspect Arnold brought up that I thought was extremely powerful is that the more people think that they have to lose, the quieter they become. It's like, you give somebody a little bit of comfort level. They have money, they have nice things, they have a nice home or a nice car, and then all of a sudden, since things are great for me, it doesn't matter that this is happening in the world. Screw all these other people. I'm doing pretty well. The financial system's working for me, so let me just shut up, keep my mouth closed. It doesn't matter what kind of other injustices are taking place, whose rights are being raped and taken away and stolen. Let me just be quiet because I have a little bit to lose, No, you have a padded prison cell. That's it. That's all. You have some padding on the walls of your prison cell. That's all anybody like that has. Don't get it twisted and think just because you might have a little more money and possessions than other people that means you're not a slave like the rest of everybody. Okay? Because you're still living in a totally feudal system. That's what this whole system is. It's feudalism. If you want to really be technical about the kind of government that really still exists, the only government that exists. Okay? We're just different feudal plantations carved up. That's what countries are. And the feudal lords are the government, violent government system and their thugs, their henchmen, okay, who are stealing the people's resources, but yet allowing them to live on the land and calling it their own land and pretending that they have property. No, you're a feudal serf living on the landlord's land. And that's all you are. Okay? Nobody owns their land or property outright. The government would say, you're not allowed to do that. Not without paying them their extortion called property tax. Not only do they want to take people's possessions, take the product of their labor, the fruit of their labor, now they want to shut them up and say that they're not even allowed to speak about it because a low-level awakening is taking place, a very low-level awakening, at least mentally. People aren't doing enough physically, but at least some people are starting to understand because some people are speaking. And that's what this is about, reaching the influencers, and then hopefully you awaken them to the extent that they become conscious enough and they become courageous enough to influence the people that they already have at their disposal, who are listening to them and paying attention to them. A person who believes in that shit to come and say, you're going to have to believe in my religious belief or I'm going to endlessly harass you. Watch what will happen to you physically. You continue to do that. I'm not going to live my life harassed. You think you're playing with some little boy, You better think again. And that's what I would say is the same thing when they're telling you have to accept the religion of authority. And they're trying to punk you out and say, not only are you not going to rebel because we're going to take your weapons, we're going to shut your mouth too, and you're not even going to be able to speak, and we'll throw you in a cage for speaking your mind. Folks, any society that's already that closed down, anybody who supports it should have been swinging from a rope a long time ago. A long time ago. Or had their body full of holes a long time ago. Not now. It's already largely too late for something like that. Largely. Not entirely. But guess what? That's why nobody's ever taken Americans' weapons. Ever, ever, ever. Bet on it, boys and girls. Bet on it like your life depends on it. Okay? I wouldn't bet your life against it because you'd lose it. Because they will never disarm this country for that very reason. Because when they try to do that, the weapons will come out. Know it like you know your fucking name. Okay? I'm looking right at you and telling you the truth about what will happen. You don't think so? You have no clue what's here. You have none, zero clue what exists right here in America. None. Okay? So I'm sorry to hear that that's happening there in Paris and in other places in Europe. But guess what? Every person who lived before you should have been more thoughtful when it came to laying down their rights to weaponry. That's all I have to say. Because now a physical rebellion is going to cost tens of millions of lives. Whereas maybe it would only have to cost a couple 100,000, if that. But now it'll be in the realm, it'll be 100 times that factor. 100 times that factor easily. Maybe more. Because you've let a tyrannical government get the reins of society, and they have a monopoly on the ability to use force through weaponry. Not here in America. There's more privately owned weapons than there are people in America. And I mean far more. Enough to arm every man, woman, and child, if necessary, 10 times over, probably. Okay? Or close to that. All right? Not to mention probably the illegal and black market weapons, which would amount to even more. So, that level of tolerating this type of abuse, I don't care how much the leftists get control over bureaucracies in government. The American population is never going to get to that level of first of all, they're already so, from people that I just talked to, many of them are so fed up on what's happening with the social media clampdown that there's going to be a big blowback to this. You don't think that there's going to be coming a huge blowback from freedom of speech advocates with what has happened in social media with these clowns on Google and Facebook and Twitter and Apple? I mean, you are trash communists. I'll say it right here. I'll say it right here on your own fucking platforms. You're trash communists. You're trash authoritarians. You're Nazis too. I'll attack both sides, of your fake imagined political spectrum between left and right. It doesn't matter what flavor of authoritarian you are. You're an authoritarian piece of trash, garbage scumbag who wants to shut down a society and make the government take over and take people's rights away, including their freedom of speech. And you ain't going to get away with it in America. You're not going to get away with it because we're going to first combat you philosophically. It's going to spill over into the political arena. But if it has to, it will spill over into physical combat if necessary. And trust me, you'll never win that. You'll never win it. You don't have the resolve to win that. You're on the wrong side of history. You're morally wrong, and you're not as good fighters as the people who will fight you. Not even close. So, my suggestion is, at least in America, you want to try and press this, you try and press it. Because you're going to find out how bad you will lose. Okay? But in Europe, guess what? They try to press it like they seem to be doing. You guys are going to have a real fucking bad time of it. Because that hasn't happened here in America to the extent that it has happened in your region of the world. And I'm telling you, when it comes down to having to defend your rights physically, you guys are going to get hit the hardest in the world. Maybe not as hard as China and as North Korea, because they're going to get hit the hardest in the whole planet. on the whole planet. But let me tell you, Europe's, the protests with the Yellow Jackets there in Paris, they want to cut people's ability to even cover that in any kind of real time because they want to come in with their narrative, And that's why I'm saying people have to be more bold, We have to really have a total pushback, blowback on these tech giants when it comes to how they're trying to shut down speech. You're Chinese communist trash, your globalist trash, your Soviet style Stalinist trash, your Maoist trash. Okay? Your authoritarian pig scum is what you are if you support that type of closure of freedom of speech. Because what you are is a person that wants a society that still has freedom of speech to become a closed society. And that's called an immoral scumbag piece of dirt. And that's what these tech giants are. And that's what all the people who would support them are. Imagine what the number your dirtbag parents did on you. Imagine what kind of trash scumbags your parents were to raise a child that would turn out into an adult that way. What trash fucking parents you had. Imagine this. Imagine the kind of dirt that your parents were, and probably your grandparents too. That they have no values over what's right, what's just, what freedom really is. You couldn't spell it, and neither could your parents and grandparents. And you would say you're trying to improve society? Wouldn't know the meaning of the term. Okay? We have to be bold, speak the truth, and influence the other influencers. And motivate them to courage.
The controlling class is not interested in having people understand this because, first of all, this leads to the causal factors, the understanding of the causal factors about why humanity is in the current conditions that we're in. Many people will have no answer for that. They don't understand the causal factors.